Welcome to our first video for the Cambridge exam preparation. In this video, we're going to talk about both the CAE, that's the C1 exam, and the CPE exam, which is C2. So this video is for you if you're considering writing either of the exams, or you haven't made up your mind yet which one you'd like to write. We're going to compare what the writing tasks are between both CAE and CPE. Second, we will look at how the writing is marked. And the writing is marked the same whether it's CAE or CPE. So we'll look at how all of the writing tasks are marked, because it's very helpful to understand how you're being marked in order to know how to structure your pieces. And finally, we'll begin to look at the essay tasks on the CAE and the CPE exams and how they are different. So first, let's just talk briefly about what is on the writing portions. So if you are choosing to write the CAE, the C1 exams, there are different types of writing tasks. Both the CPE and the CAE have a mandatory essay, and then they have a second optional writing task. So both CAE and CPE require you to write an essay, and then they also have a second writing task, which you have to do, but you have a choice between a few different text types. And for the C1, the CAE, your choices are a letter or an email. The second choice is a proposal. The third is a report. And the fourth is a review. Whereas for the CPE, for the C2 exam, you have the mandatory essay, and then you have the choice of writing an article, a letter, a report, or a review. And for all of these writing tasks, Cambridge gives you stuff to write about, but how they do that looks a little bit different. So before we begin to compare the two, let's look at how these are marked, because both exams, C1 and C2, will mark your writing in the same way. They have 4 categories. There are 4 different ways you get marked in your writing, whether it's the essay, your letter, your report, whatever. These are the 4 things. First, content. Second, communicative achievement. That's a tricky one to say. Third, the organization. And fourth, language. Now, even for myself, as someone who's been teaching English for 11 years, I needed to dive deep into what exactly they were talking about here to be able to decode for you how the people who will mark your exams are what they are doing and what they're looking for. So let's go through each one of these one at a time. They're actually pretty simple. First of all, content. This probably makes sense to you. This base just focuses on how well you have fulfilled the task. In other words, if you have done what you were asked to do, if you stayed on topic, if you've hit the key ideas. So that's what content is about. Basically, have you done what the task asked for, or did you make a mistake by doing something that wasn't really asked for? That's the content. Second is communicative achievement. This one focuses on how appropriate the writing is for the task and whether or not you have used the appropriate register. So there's 2 things there. One, how well did you meet the conventions of the text type? So is your essay using essay structure? Is your article using article structure? Is your letter using the structure of a letter? Is your report, does it look like a report? Your review, does it look like a review? So that's the first thing, how well you actually achieve the task itself. And then second, talking about register, this basically means formal versus informal. So when we talk about register, it's kind of a sliding scale. On one end, you have extremely formal, like it's a business-based letter and, perhaps you're writing to a prospective client, or just imagine you're writing to like royalty. And then way on the other side of this sliding scale, you've got like your buddies that you're texting. Now, I don't think I've ever seen a text message or a WhatsApp conversation yet on Cambridge, so don't get used to using like lol and stuff like that. But on that end, you've got the much more just sort of like friendly type of conversation and word choice and ways you'd refer to people. Maybe to make a German connection here, the formal is you're using Sie, and the informal end of the spectrum, you're using do. So communicative achievement, how well did you do the text type? Does your essay look like an essay? And secondly, did you use the appropriate register? Given the text type, did you find the right place on that sliding scale between formal and informal? So the third thing they're going to mark you on is your organization. And this focuses on the way you've put the piece of writing together. In other words, is it logically ordered? Now, to me, that's kind of similar as communicative achievement, but I'm not going to start ragging on Cambridge just yet. This basically means, have you actually structured the words and put the words in the place that they should be? And when we read your piece, that it flows from sentence to sentence, paragraph to paragraph, section to section. So that's the third one, organization. How have you put the piece together? And finally, your language. So this basically focuses on two things, your vocabulary and your grammar. And essentially, Cambridge is looking for variety here. They want to see a range of language that's used, but they don't want you just becoming a human thesaurus. They want you to use accurate words as well. So if you imagine a little bit of a graph, kind of what they're asking for here is a wide variety of language, but at the same time, you're using that language accurately and appropriately. So language and your mark for this focuses on your vocabulary and your grammar and the variety or range of it you use and how accurately you have used it. So those are the four areas you're going to get marked on all of your writing pieces. Your essay, your report, your article, your letters. You're going to get marked on content, whether or not you've done what you were asked to do, your communicative achievement, so whether or not your letter looks like a letter, for example, organization, how you have put the piece of writing together, and finally your language, the mix of vocabulary and grammar you're using. So I'd actually encourage you to kind of think of this like a game, and these are the four ways you get points in the game. But the game is you're writing a piece of writing, but have these four things in mind as you're creating your piece. Okay, so we've compared the difference between the CAE and the CPE exam questions for writing. We've talked about how both of them are marked. Briefly, I'd like to just zoom in on the mandatory essay. As I said, both CAE and CPE have a mandatory essay. However, the essays between the two of them look a little bit different. So let's first talk about the C1 CAE exam. The essay on the C1 exam is usually written for like somebody as a follow-up to a class activity. So some examples from previous years include, you attended a seminar or a workshop or a class, or you watched a documentary, you heard something on the radio, you checked out a YouTube video. And the main purpose of this task for C1 is to underline relevant, important issues on the stated topic. So actually with the C1, they're kind of looking for you to bring some of your own ideas to the table and to support an argument with points, reasons, and logic. And an essay should be well organized with an introduction, clear development of your idea, and an appropriate conclusion. And ideally, it holds your reader's attention by using a wide range of vocabulary and structures. So essentially, you're going to have to present an argument and give reasons for this. So you're going to have to take a side, choose where you stand on the issue, and basically defend that. Now, in order to do this, you need to be able to give your opinions and agree or disagree in either a formal or a neutral register. So if you imagine that sliding scale, we're looking at something that's more formal or maybe possibly to the middle neutral, but you're not like attacking people. There should be no name calling. You shouldn't be calling someone stupid, for example, who holds a different opinion than you on the topic. You are free to agree or disagree with the opinions given in the task, or you can kind of stay neutral and discuss the pros and cons of both sides. Either of those options is fine. Now, what they're really looking for here are how well you can plan and paragraph things. They're looking for good use of linking words and phrases, and you also need to be able to practice writing, the opening and concluding paragraphs. And we'll talk about linking words and some kind of life hacks for helpful phrases you can keep in mind when writing in future sessions. So now let's compare that to the CPE, or the C2 mandatory essay question. Now this is often written for your teacher, so it's a little bit, kind of formal sounding. Again, obviously needs to be well organized, has an introduction, clear development of your ideas, and a conclusion. Now, the difference here is on the C2, you'll actually have to read 2 short texts on a particular topic. And your essay differs from the C1, because in C1 you can kind of give pros and cons of something on a topic. For the C2 exam, it's different. You need to read these 2 texts, and you need to be able to summarize them, and you need to evaluate the main ideas from those texts in your essay. And then at the very end, include your own opinion on it. So there's a little less freedom in the C2. Your main job here is to summarize and evaluate the ideas in the essay. And we'll go into more detail in this in an upcoming video, but essentially in those 2 texts that they give you, there's most likely going to be 2 main ideas in each text. So 4 main ideas that the Cambridge evaluators are looking for that you were able to pick up on and then able to articulate back to them or express and summarize. So the essays, they'll be kind of tied together with like one main idea, and you're going to have to do some careful planning for this because it's easy to write too much, trying to capture those 4 ideas, summarize them, back those ideas up, and then include your own opinion as well. So we'll give you a few hacks a little bit later on for how to summarize your ideas if you're choosing to write the C2. So there you have it. We've talked about how the C1 and C2 writing portions of the exams are different. We've talked about how all of the writing tasks on both exams will be marked, and we've taken a little bit of a look at how the CAE and the CPE exams look different. So this video was for you if you're thinking of writing the CPE or the CAE exam. So the next videos, we're now going to take a bit of a split in the path because I'd like to look at the essays in the CAE, the C1 exam, and look at the essays in the CPE, the C2 exam, in different videos because they are different tasks and they're different things you need to do and different pieces of advice I can give to you. Now, maybe you haven't made up your mind if you're writing C1 or C2 yet. That's fine. You are welcome to watch both sets of videos. And of course, if you have already made up your mind, you think you're going to write C2, obviously there's no rule that you can't check out the C1 videos or vice versa. However, in our next set of videos, we'll dedicate one to looking in more depth at the CAE essay question and a separate video to look at the CPE writing essay question as well. We will take a look at sample questions and as well break down sample answers. We'll take a peek at how they are graded and give you a better sense of how to get marks and probably more importantly, how not to lose marks. Hope this has been useful.